All right, everybody. I was just hanging out down in the shop, newly cleaned shop that is. Oh, feels so good. I know it might look still a little disorganized, but at least we can get around down here and get some work done. So rock and roll. I was trying to play a couple little ditties for some intro riffs and other just background music for these videos. I was using this guitar. This is the one I have to play right now. Luckily, this is my daughter's guitar. Luckily, she's generous enough to let me strum on it whenever I want to, pretty much. So this is what I was using to do some of those little recordings. And I remember in a previous video, I had mentioned that this guitar, I never quite got around to finishing the setup on it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. Bring you guys along for the ride. So what I'm going to first do is check the string height at the nut. And so what I'll do there to do that is hold the string down here on between the second and third fret. That's going to make the string be a direct straight line from its contact point on the second fret to the nut. And what I'm going to do is measure the distance underneath the string right here at the first fret. I know what the measurements need to be. What I actually use is kind of called a tapping method. And so what I'll do is tap on here, and if you can hear that string moving and tapping into the fret, well, then that means you're getting close, right? Like, I don't want much movement there, just a tiny amount. I've got the actual, dimensions, specifications I work to written down. It's somewhere around like 10 thousandths at the treble and something like maybe 15 thousandths or so on the bass. But to be honest, like, your accuracy at measuring those, even with one of those really fancy dial indicator tools, gets pretty sketchy. And you're working with a radius deal here and everything else. So actually you can get quite good at just kind of doing this little tap method and getting that nut set up nice and low and excellent. No buzz, and we'll play nice and tight. Then the next thing I'll do is I will set a capo across on the first fret here, and that'll give me a straight line from the first fret to the bridge. And what I'll do there is then measure what the relief is at the 12th. We're shooting for like probably, because this has a little lower string tension than what you'd find on most typical full scale guitars, unless you're using like really light gauge strings. Since it has a lower string tension, I'm gonna leave the action just a little bit high. And although a lot of people will tell you, oh, a guitar plays so much easier with ultra low action. You want those, you want those strings resting right on the fretboard. Well, this is a learner's guitar, and while I think very accomplished guitar players have oftentimes been known to set their action kind of high, it's actually pretty good for beginners too, because your cleanness of your note fretting isn't super good, and that's a balancing act between the downward pressure you need to apply, which would dictate low action, but also the accuracy with which you're pushing on those strings and you're making contact. And you get a little, I feel like you get a little bit of leeway when you have that action just a little bit higher. Not high, but just a little bit higher than what the lowest it could actually possibly be. So we'll work our way toward that. That'll involve, I do have an adjustable bridge on these, but they're only adjustable up. I like them to be seated down, at least when I get the guitar set up, from stock, seated all the way down so that they're making really good, firm, solid contact. Not that raising them up is bad, but then you're relying upon the stiffness of this piece of wood here, which it's very stiff, but this is a piece of ebony down here. And right now it's being fully supported by the lower bridge piece. If we start cranking that up, this downward pressure, specifically these kind of middle strings here, is going to want to act to try to bow that and reduce the radius that we have on the strings. So, I mean, it's not a bad thing, but I just try to get it set up a certain way, which means what we're going to do is remove material off of these brass saddles. So, and I haven't finished polishing this up yet either. So we'll see what I have time for. It's getting pretty late already, but I'll see if I can throw together a couple of time lapses of getting this thing set up a little bit better. And if I have time, I'll try to play a before and after too, to see what the difference makes, you know. Should sound better. Maybe it'll sound the same. You know, not a good guitar player, so the jury's really out on what'll happen, but I think it'll be good. All right, stick around. All right, the nut height is set. We're in good shape. Just wanted to show you quickly what I was using. I use these gauged files. They're the same thickness as the string. They're sharp on either side, and they're good for kind of roughing that bone material down for the nut. And then I follow up with a abrasive cord. This leaves the bottom of that nut channel nice and smooth and consistent, and just does a nice job of helping polish it up so that it's going to tune and stay in tune really nicely. So that's done. This nut will come out after the rest of the setup's done, and I'll just clean up around it and make sure it's nice and highly polished. But nut's in good shape. That part of the setup is rolling along. Next, we'll move back here. Again, going to use the gauged slotting files and the abrasive cord, and I'll work on this and get this to the dimensions that I mentioned earlier. All right, so it turns out that I was able to get the action set at 3.5 64ths on the bass side and 3 on the treble. Basically, we've got like 3 64ths on these 3 treble strings, and then these just ever so slightly kind of roll their way out to 3.5 64ths to give you a sensation for how much that is. Here's a scale, and on the bottom side of it, you can see the 64ths. So we're going for 3 of those. So pretty thin. I'd say a couple sheets of paper, maybe 2, I don't know. Pretty nice and low. And probably a little lower than I kind of suggested that I might be going on it. But it really took nothing to get there, and it had no buzzes or no issues. I haven't done a final truss rod check, but it's ringing out pretty nicely. Great sustain, and actually a surprise because there wasn't a huge amount of adjustment that I did to this guitar just now, but it feels incredibly better. So yeah, I don't think tonight I'm going to be able to do those side-by-side comparisons of before and after, but we will get to that in a future video. Next thing I have to do is work on kind of polishing up that bridge and sanding off the extra material. Same on the nut, get it all polished, smooth, and fitting excellently and perfect. Just kind of the last final touch-up step here. So I'll play you out. Remember, if you like videos like this, to subscribe, click the like button, and, you know, tell your friends. Keep watching for us.